Chapter 6. Wake up, Katy. Katy, Katy, wake up. The sound of the match being struck didn't faze Katy. The light of the coal oil lamp didn't disturb her. She slept. She was oblivious to the beginning of this, another day in Christmas tree country. Tick-tock, tick-tock, scrape, kerplunk, the sounds of metal she didn't know about. Alan, fully dressed, started the day by scooping out the stove's ashes and emptying the coal bucket. He was building a fire in the Wilson heating stove. Katy heard no sounds. When he walked into the kitchen, his footsteps on the wood floor went without notice. When he said, "Yeah, the water froze up in this water bucket last night," only he heard the words. Katy didn't hear him open and close the back door. When he set the water bucket down and dropped the dipper on the kitchen floor, she slept peacefully. Tick-tock, tick-tock, the rattling of Alan's buckle-up overshoes, the pouring of water into the tea kettle, and the opening and closing of the Wilson heating stove door went unnoticed. Katy didn't hear him in the kitchen as he lifted the stove lid and rustled the kerosene-soaked corncob kindling. No, she didn't hear him place wood in the kitchen stove. She didn't hear him strike the match. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The back door was opened. The back door was closed. Clang, metal against metal. Plunk, kerplunk, clang. Again, the back door was opened and closed. Silence. The clock gave its wake-up call. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, Katy didn't hear the timepiece. Once more the back door was opened and closed. Sleepily she mumbled, "Alan, Alan, we're almost there. We're almost there." Scrape, bang, slam. Katy did hear that, and startled by the noise, she opened her eyes and looked around. Her heart was pounding, fast and hard. She could feel and hear its rhythm. There, she thought, I heard something like a door opening and closing. I heard a door. Where? What's happening? Katy sat up in bed, talking only to herself. Well, I'm here in the bed. Geraldine's here in the bed with me, and I heard a door opening and closing. Yes, I heard a door. Where? Over there's Alan by the heating stove. Oh, he's been taking out the ashes. He's got a fire going. And there the boys are, sound asleep. Alan? Alan? She asked, confused. What time is it? Huh? What time is it? It's just a little after 5, Katy. What day is it? Huh? What day is it, Alan? What day is it? Why, Katy, it's a Saturday. What month is it? What month is it? Well, it's December. It's the 21st. You're trying to wake up, hon, he said, moving close to the bed. You're just trying to wake up. Wake up, Katy, wake up. I've just had the strangest dream, she said. She looked at him very closely and blinked several times. She thought, maybe I'm still dreaming. I may not be really awake yet. Alan, is it the 21st of December? Yeah, it is. It's the 21st already, and this year is just about gone. Now, Katy, you just stay in the bed till this house gets heated up a little bit more. I thought that water'd freeze up in the bucket last night, and it did. He sat down close to the heating stove. It ought to warm up in the day, hon. I'm surprised if we don't get some fallen weather out of this, maybe some snow. Yeah, we could, he paused. And Katy, that old sow's going to find pigs any time now. I put her up in that back stall. That's a mean sow when she's in a shape like this. And, well, she said nothing. Allen talked. She didn't want to talk. She didn't want to think. Yeah, hon, I had to break some ice on the pond. I'd like to see it warm up some. I thought it was going to, but I don't know. I threw down some of that fescue hay. That's good feed. We've got quite a bit left, maybe enough to hold them over. Maybe. Now that's a pretty good barn for now. I'm just glad we've got a barn to keep that hay in. Yeah, and I'm wanting to help John haul up some wood this week. Poor old John. It's like Mommy says, he just beats his head against the wall. Yeah, well, we do too, but poor old John and Deli. I just feel sorry for John sometimes. Mommy worries a lot about him, just worries about how he'll make it. This depression is hard on all of us. Well, I'll help him saw up some wood with that buck saw. We can get up a good bit in 3 or 4 hours. Yeah, one day this week. Katy was listening, but she said nothing, as Allen just talked. You know, Katy, hon, I'd say we ought to do a little better up here if the weather's good this summer. If it'll just rain, we'll get a good corn crop and have hay to carry these cattle all next winter. And if we've had a bad drought, well, maybe we won't. Maybe it'll rain, and we can have some good crops. Maybe we can add a few more head. There's money in cattle, if the weather's right, and if the bottom won't fall out of things. Well, Pap Webb, he made it in cattle, Katy. Poppy's so disgusted with this depression. Mommy's just about ready to give up. Herbert Hoover's got this country in an awful shape. He paused. He opened the heating stove door and added more wood. Again, he sat down by the stove. He looked down at the floor. Mommy says that some kind of Social Security is what Roosevelt wants. He moved his chair away from the stove. They call it some kind of insurance for the old folks. Well, it might help out a feller if he gets too sick or too old to work. Mommy said something about a poor farm for some people. Now, Roosevelt thinks he knows how to run this country. He promised something called a New Deal. We need a good man in office. Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He says he wants to help people. He says he wants to put people back to work. His voice trailed off. Yeah, Katy, Roosevelt started up the CCC camps and got the men back to building good roads and cleaning out ditches. And Poppy, since he's got on with the WPA, and now that he's got that road commissioner's job, he'll see that things get done. Mommy said she's heard some of the men in the CCC camps get good pay, like $21 a month, and every one of the men gets a new pair of shoes. They furnish 'em clothes. They call 'em uniforms. Yeah, but they have to work for what they get. Some people are too trifling to work, Katy. They'd starve to death before they'd hit a lick. But if a feller gets hungry enough, he'll work, I'd say. But you know, hon, there's all the people in them big cities. They can't eat concrete sidewalks. No, hungry children can't eat concrete. Now, Roosevelt, I hope he knows what he's doing. He said a dollar bill's not worth more than about 60 cents. No, money just won't go anywhere these days. Again, his voice trailed off. Now, when this WPA really gets going, a lot more folks will have jobs. Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Poppy's always been a Republican, But that Hoover, why, he would have just let people starve to death. They say some senator's causing a big Q-row and getting mad. He says he'll desert the whole Democrat outfit if Roosevelt goes ahead with the New Deal. Yeah, they say he's all riled up. They say that senator got up in front of all of the Democrats up there in Washington and said that Roosevelt didn't have a good bone in his whole body. And some of them say that senator said the New Deal was like what Hitler and Stalin wanted. Oh, well, you know, Katie, he just trying to stir up trouble, I guess. This whole country needs help. Well, I'd better take a look at that kitchen stove. Allen stopped talking, and Katie said to herself, I need to get out of this bed and get my clothes on. I just feel tired this morning. I guess I must have dreamed all night long. She heard him in the kitchen. She heard him move toward the back door. Allen? Huh? He said, and looked into the front room, concerned about her. But she said, You just go on with what you need to do. I'll look after these stoves. But she hesitated, took a deep breath, and said, Whew, last night I had the strangest dream. This is just not like Katie, he thought. She's been talking out of her head about a dream, and it's not like her to stay in bed this long. He walked over to her, bent down, and touched her forehead. Are you sick, hon? I don't think you have any fever. Maybe you'll feel better after you get up and stir around some. The house is tobble warm. Well, I've got to slop the hogs and break some more ice on the pond. Before he left the room, he pulled the chair away from the hot stove. Katie's day began when her feet hit the cold floor. The back door was closed. Time passed. The fire in the heating stove had caught up. The front room was warmer. The children slept. In the stillness of the house, Katie's thought returned to the dream. Even though she was awake, she was confused. She couldn't stop thinking about the long dream. It seemed so real, and it'd gone on and on and on all night long. She couldn't put it out of her mind. She said to herself, This is the strangest thing that I've ever had happen to me. Well, and I guess I'd better get around here. When Allen opened the back door again, the coal oil lamp was on the eating table. Katie was in the kitchen, dressed in heavy clothes and long stockings and overshoes to warm up her cold feet. Through the kitchen and into the dark front room he went, dropped wood into the wood box, and added more wood to the heating stove. A weak stream of light from the lamp in the kitchen streaked across the dark front room. The faint light swept across the foot of the bed where Kenneth Ray and Benny lay, and cast a shadow over the other bed in the far corner where Geraldine was sleeping. Oh, these children are suffering satisfaction, he thought. This house will be good and warm when their feet hit this floor. After pulling a straight-back chair close to the stove, he sat down to warm up. His thoughts carried him away, for a short while, to John and Deli, Mommy and Poppy, blind Grandma, Frank and Mary, Dan and Gertie, Bill, Mary, Minnie, Roscoe, and Philip and Robert, and the Brookses. Then he thought about his blessings. His 3 children were asleep over there in the front room where he was. Katie was in the kitchen. He could smell her cooking fresh sausage and eggs and biscuits and coffee. He heard the familiar scraping of the spoon in the skillet of Webb's sop. Yes, Allen was thankful. Katie, he called out from the front room. Hon, I think that big sow's trying to find pigs, but I don't think it'll be today. I just hope not. while I'm gone. She's bad about rolling over on her pigs. I hope it won't be today. Now don't you go out there around her in that back stall. She's mean." With concern in his voice, he said, "But, hon, I think everything'll be all right until I get back around 4. I want to get back home before it's too dark, in time to get things done up around here." She smiled as she thought, "He's told me about that sow and how mean she is 100 times." She chuckled to herself. "And that's how Lulie is. She just says things over and over and over to Albert and to the children. Well, that's all right. And, hon, I've got 2 barrels of water hauled up from the spring. That ought to last us till Monday, maybe." Katy, finding a few minutes to be away from the cook stove, joined him in the front room. She stood close to the heating stove, warming one side and turning to warm the other. Allen was quiet. The children slept. The heating stove was getting red hot. The tea kettle steamed. Katy was fidgety and feeling tired, more tired than usual. Finally she broke her silence. "Allen, I had the strangest dream last night. It lasted all night long. Oh, me. Do you know what I dreamed about?" He didn't answer her question. Instead, he looked up at the stovepipe and the flue. He stood up and turned down the damper. She waited, as if she expected to help him sort out her thoughts. He didn't answer her question. With her heart beating faster and faster, she said, "Well, Allen, I dreamed I'd say all night long. I was back at home in the Tunnel Hill School. Poppy met me at the branch. Miss Lucille took me to the Vienna spelling bee. I went off up to Lincoln. Mabel was still alive. I had scarlet fever. Then I dreamed all about when we got married with Beatrice and Raleigh over at Peter Mack's, and your folks helped us build that house on the Gene Kuntz place. Poppy tacked that heavy paper on the walls. Mommy helped me paper the walls. Poppy put up the flue. Nellie was helping me cook for you men, and we had that good garden, Allen. And Kenneth Ray was born, and then Benny, and then Geraldine. Now, hon," he said, spending his opinion, "it was just a dream. Just a dream. You've not been feeling well here now for the last few days." "I know. My stomach's been weak lately." "Well, I've just never in all my life had a dream like it. It must have lasted all night long. Anyway, just let me tell you about it. I dreamed about the good cistern on the Gene Kuntz place, and the children played. I was trying to get my chickens started, and then we picked up and moved up here. Allen, I tell you, it was as plain as day, and we went right by the Webb Cemetery and the Webb School, and we pulled up here in that wagon with the children and a big load of stuff." She paused and sighed. "Well, I guess I better get back in the kitchen and grease them biscuits and stick 'em in that oven." Their conversation was finished. This day lay before them. Katy was no longer dreaming. Quickly, Allen stood up and opened the heating stove door. The stove needed more wood. Kerplunk, slam, and that noise woke Kenneth Ray and Benny. They couldn't sleep 1 minute longer. Whispering and laughing came from the direction of their bed. Bed covers began to move. Off the warm feather bed rolled Kenneth Ray first, and then Benny, barefoot and dressed in long-handled underwear. They moved quickly across the linoleum floor toward their daddy and the warmth of the stove. He reached out to each of the boys and pulled them onto his lap. Leaving her post in the kitchen, Katy joined the family long enough to look at Geraldine and pick up a couple of short sticks of wood, and she took time to speak to the boys, too, and said, "How are you feeling, Kenneth Ray and Benny? Son, how are you?" "Aw, for goodness sake, Katy, you know they're all right." Well, Alan's probably right, she thought, and they wouldn't admit to being sick if they were so sick they couldn't hold their heads up on a day like this. "Now, children," Alan continued, "when we get all the milking done, we'll light out in the wagon and take that fresh meat down to Mommy and Poppy's, and on the way back home we ought to be able to find us a pretty Christmas tree somewhere along the side of the road and cut it down and haul it home with us." Alan was in a teasing mood and felt mischievous. He told them about how long-legged they were, and said that they were bigger than he was, too big to be sitting on his lap. He suggested they let their poor old daddy sit on their laps. Kenneth Ray laughed, thinking that was funny. Soon Benny and Alan were laughing. From the kitchen, Katy heard them having fun, and she began laughing too. "You all are having a good time in here," Katy said, as she walked into the front room and toward the bed where Geraldine was still sleeping. "It's a wonder to me you've not been loud enough to wake her up. She's getting a good rest, and that's good." Katy bent down to look at her closely and thought, "Geraldine's a pretty baby with those brown curls. A pretty child. Last night, when I doctored her all up, she just went right off to sleep after we rocked a little bit, and I guess I must have gone to sleep while I was holding her. It seems, I'm pretty sure she woke up one time, and I think one time up in the morning I gave her a drink of water. Yeah, well, I guess I'll get back in there and put a stick of wood in that cook stove and take a look at the biscuits." As she walked toward the kitchen door, she could hear Alan counting 6. "Ice, fi, dry, fire, from 6. That's what your great-grandpa taught me to say, boys. That's German." "Yeah, your great-grandpa came from Germany." Saying what Miss Eileen had taught him in the Webb School, Kenneth Ray said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. "And now, boys," Alan said, "we'd better get around here. You ought to get up off my lap and get your clothes on and get some shoes and socks on your feet. Katy," he said, calling to her from the front room, "what do you want them to put on? Get up off my lap now, children. I need to look after this stove again." Kerplunk! Slam! While Alan tended the heating stove, Katy tended the needs of the boys. From the clothesline in the corner behind the heating stove, she took down 2 pairs of long-handled underwear, 2 homemade flannel shirts, and 2 pairs of heavy socks. She reminded them to get their clean overalls from the back of the chair and to get their shoes from behind the stove. All of the stirring around and bending over, combined with the greasy sausage smells, caused her to feel sick. She said nothing about feeling tired and wanting to throw up any minute. No, her family was ready for something to eat. Her place was in the kitchen, putting breakfast on the table. Thoughts of Katy's cooking drew Alan into the kitchen, close to the warm cook stove. He sat down to Katy's left. That was his usual place, close enough to watch as she added the morning's milk to the Webb sop, and he was there to see that pan of 15 golden biscuits come out of that hot oven. It was almost as if Geraldine heard her name being called, and knew Daddy was sitting in the kitchen by the cook stove, just waiting for her to crawl up on his lap. Her little bare feet hit the floor in a run, and she was holding up both arms for him to pick her up and put her on his lap, where she'd be warm. Again, like many mornings before, her long flannelette gown was tucked under her feet and legs. She snuggled close to him. She was sleepy-eyed, there by the kitchen stove, watching as the web sop bubbled up in Mommy's big cast-iron skillet. No, the routine didn't vary too much from day to day for Geraldine. Mommy'd work right there at the front of that cook stove, always having that skillet on that front stove lid. Geraldine would sit there with Daddy. Mommy'd use that same big spoon, morning after morning. Geraldine would watch Mommy as she made that web sop go around and around and around and around. She'd watch it bubble up. "This child feels better this morning, Alan, don't you think so?" After feeling the top of her forehead, he agreed. "I'll say she does. If it wouldn't be too cold, we'd do this little piggy. But, hon, it's too cold to do that. And it's too cold to ride a little horsey. And right now, I'd say we ought to get some warm clothes on." So Katy moved the skillet of gravy to a cooler stove lid and took care of dressing Geraldine, and Alan left the comfort of his warm place by the kitchen stove to carry in a few more sticks of wood for the wood boxes. And Katy was setting the table as Alan came through the back door. From the blue and white speckled granite coffee pot, Katy poured the steaming coffee into Alan's cup and then filled her cup. Tall glasses of whole milk were placed by Kenneth Ray and Benny's plates. "Boys," Katy said, "you wash your hands and get over here on this bench so we can eat something. It's a good bit after 6 o'clock already. Geraldine, you won't have to sit on my lap this morning, hon. You can sit right here in Kenneth Ray's high chair. I want to see you try to take a few bites." With the family seated at the eating table, Alan looked at his plate. Although he said nothing, he was returning thanks for the food and everything. From his cup he poured the steaming coffee into his white saucer to let it cool. Leaning toward Geraldine, who was seated on his right, he teasingly asked, "Do you want some coffee, hon?" Geraldine's face lit up. Her green eyes sparkled. Coffee, coffee was a word she loved to say, mainly because Alan was the one who enticed her to ask for coffee. He'd laugh when she'd ask for coffee like Daddy's. Into Geraldine's white cup, Katy poured a small amount of coffee, filled the cup with milk, and generously sweetened the milk coffee with sugar. Together the two of them drank coffee, with Geraldine drinking from a cup and Alan sipping from his saucer. When Katy found the time, she drank from her cup. On the table, steam was rising from the big bowl of web sop and the platters of eggs and sausage. Surrounding the large plate of hot biscuits were a bowl of homemade butter and pints of blackberry and strawberry jelly. There was plenty of food on Katy's table. "This sausage really tastes good, Katy. You've got just the right amount of seasoning in it. Not too much, hon. You know, Katy, not everybody knows how to get it right." "Well," Katy answered, "I don't know. I'm just thankful that we've got fresh meat." "Kenneth Ray, you eat your gravy and eggs," Alan told him. "And Benny, quit squirming around, son. You might just turn over that bench. You're awfully quiet, Katy, and you look a little peaked. Don't you feel good, hon?" To keep him from worrying, her reply was, "I feel fine." She held a biscuit, buttered it, added a dollop of Geraldine's favorite, strawberry jelly, and placed the biscuit on Geraldine's plate. "I'm just trying to get Geraldine to eat a few bites, and I'm thinking of what else I need to get ready for you to take down to Lulie." She paused and blew out her breath. "Whew! And are you going to stop by Lonzo's and leave him some fresh meat? If you do see Lonzo, see if he's got just a few walnuts to spare. but I feel fine. Is it your legs that are bothering you this morning, hon? I'm afraid that you'll have bad legs like your mother. That ulcer's been on Rosie Mae's leg for a long time. Mommy says bad legs are just inherited. I guess Mommy's right. However, Katie's varicose veins and hurting legs weren't her main problem. She'd have to find time alone with Alan, away from the children, and tell him about this sick feeling in her stomach. She glanced up and noticed he was studying her, but neither of them said another word. Before anyone could say Jack Robinson, breakfast was finished. The milking was done. The hogs had been slopped. The chickens had been fed. Old Beck and Kate were hitched up, and the wagon had been loaded, and Alan was on the wagon seat. And next to Alan was Benny, and next to Benny was Kenneth Ray, and they were calling out, "Bye, Geraldine. Bye, Geraldine. Bye, Mommy. Mommy. Bye, Mommy," across the front yard, and down the lane to the main road the team pulled the wagon. Then they left the lane and turned to the right. They headed toward the west. They were going on the main road, which went from Tunnel Hill to Goreville. The wagon load of 3 passengers, and the fresh hog meat, and Katie's bushel basket followed Old Beck and Kate down the road, going down one hill and up another hill. They went past the Webb Cemetery Road, and then they were out of Katie's sight. She knew they'd go past the Webb Church, and after going a good distance farther, they'd turn left to go south toward the Carson place, and on that southbound road there'd be another road, just a little more than a narrow path, like a cow path, leading to Lonzo's dugout. Following them in her thoughts, she stood on the back porch of the Foxtan Webb house, holding Geraldine and looking toward the west. "Say, hon," she said, moving away from the door, "we've got a lot to do. I'm going to wash these dishes and milk buckets after I get these beds made, and when it's close to dinner time, I'll put on a pot of Crowder peas and boil a few potatoes. That sounds good. You like Crowder peas, hon. Then we'll make a jar of butter. I'll wash that chicken and soak it in salt water and fry it up. That'll be enough for our supper, too. Now, there's your baby doll, and there's all of your spools to play with while I'm busy. But first, I need to throw more wood into this heating stove, and I'll add a couple of sticks to this stove while I'm at it." The day of December 21st, 1935, was in full swing for Katie. First, she straightened up the house by taking care of the 2 beds. With a broom, she swept off the bed springs, slats, and rails. She turned over the feather beds and patted them down. As she worked, she thought, "I'm just glad the children didn't wet on the bed last night. Maybe I ought to ask Mommy about where she got all of those good goose feathers for these pillows. I can't remember just where she said they came from. They make a soft pillow. I might ought to ask her about that. And maybe I ought to think about getting a gander and a goose to have here around this place. Homemade unbleached muslin sheets and homemade quilts dressed the 2 beds. To smooth out high and low spots, Katie used a broom, beginning at the headboard of one bed near the pillows and moving the broom handle across the covers to the foot of the bed. Then she moved to the other bed to do the same thing. One day, she thought, Geraldine'll be big enough to stand over there on that side of the bed and hold that other end of this broom and help me do this job. Lord, just let her grow up and don't let anything bad happen to her. Well, I'd better hit a few licks and sweep up this front room a bit. The floor is dirty and the fluff is just flying." Contentedly, Geraldine played. Rapidly, the morning hours passed. The chores, though endless, were under Katie's control. Her thoughts constantly were full of concern for Alan and the boys. She took the time to glance at the clock. She was ready to rest for a spell. "I'll get that box of pictures out from under the bed," she thought, "and we'll just sit down and look at them for a minute or two. And we'll let these peas cook for a bit. And I'll roll that chicken in some flour and fry it up. Let me throw a few more sticks of wood into this heating stove, hon, and we'll get up here by this stove where it's warm, and we'll just take a few minutes and look at these pictures." Memories flooded her mind as she pulled the box from under the bed. She knew the first thing she'd find would be the Bible inside an old pillow slip. Katie hadn't put the Bible in the box and forgotten all about it. When she could, she often read to Alan after supper. She'd pop popcorn and read to him by the light of the coal lamp. Sometimes the children would be playing there in the front room, or they'd be sound asleep. Katie herself would almost be too tired to stay awake, but she enjoyed watching, and she enjoyed reading to Alan. Lately, they'd been finding enough time every now and then to do a little reading. Sometimes Alan would just have to hop into bed because he was dead tired, but Katie remembered reading the chapter where they'd left off, Matthew 24. The pillow slip was removed. She ran her fingers over the dark cover and opened that very special book. On the second page in her writing were these words: Alan Adolph Schierbaum and Katie Catherine Brooks, united in holy matrimony, February 18, 1928. Kenneth Ray, born May 5, 1929. Benjamin Franklin, born April 16, 1931. Elsie Geraldine, born September 14, 1933. The book was once again tucked inside the pillow slip and laid on the bed. Katie then removed the heavy cloth from the box. There on top, and the first picture she picked up, was the one of Kenneth Ray when he was 14 months old, sitting in the high chair Katie's father had made, just for Katie's first child. Kenneth Ray was smiling and wearing the rompers and the embroidered rabbits. I remember I made those rompers and embroidered those little rabbits. Time really flies, she thought. Kenneth Ray's got a mouth like Alan's, she thought, and he gets his eyes from Alan, I guess. Look here, Geraldine. Look, hon. Look at this picture. Kenneth Ray's got bluish-green eyes. And you and Benny, well, you've got green eyes. You're all pretty children. And all three of you, yes, all three of you have used that high chair. Other thoughts she kept to herself. Geraldine doesn't need to know this, but I'm going to have to tell Alan it looks like maybe another one's on the way. Sometime up in July next year. Alan'll be proud. The clock struck 11 times, telling Katie it was close to midday. She was ready to rest for a spell, but before I sit down, I'd better take that chicken out of that salt water and roll it in some flour and get it started. I guess I ought to look at this heating stove, too, while I'm at it, after I put this box where it belongs. The pictures were placed back inside the box. The dark cloth covered the picture. The Bible, all covered up, lay on top. The box was scooted under the bed. In her mind, she could see Alan and the boys going south. If everything's all right, they ought to be making some good time. I just wonder where they are, she thought. Without dwelling on that question too long, she washed her hands and stirred the pot of Crowder peas. There's enough grease in this skillet to fry this chicken, and I'll mash these potatoes. Now where is my potato masher? Geraldine likes to play with these pots and pans, and I guess oh, there's the potato masher. Katy hummed as she worked in her kitchen. Geraldine hummed as she played with her pots, pans, and her baby doll. Katy noticed the dimness of the light filtering through the north kitchen window and realized that wet, heavy snow was hitting the glass. "Oh, Lord," she said softly, "if that snow falls for very long, Alan and the boys will get covered up with it. Well, the boys can get under the quilts. I'm glad I put in an extra quilt, but they will be out in this weather trying to go down to Luly's. And this just might not be a good day for Alan to take off out of here with Kenneth Ray and Benny." Katy moved to the back porch to look at what was worrying her, the road to the west and the snow. She felt anxious. Yes, she'd been feeling really anxious for several days. She'd been just not feeling well for several days, especially during the early mornings. She'd been having times when she wanted to start crying, and that wasn't normal for Katy. Suddenly, she began thinking about the dream that she'd had, but Katy had no time for dwelling on that dream. No, dinner was ready, and Geraldine was saying, "Mommy, Mommy, I'm hungry, and I want Daddy." "It's all right, hon." "And Kenneth Ray and Benny, Mommy." Sitting down in her chair at the eating table, with Geraldine in the high chair, Katy spoke gently. "The Lord knows we're thankful for this food. Now, you try to eat a bite, drink your milk. Here's a good drumstick. Let's eat some of these good mashed potatoes. And you like Crowder peas, too. Do you want some applesauce? I'll put extra sugar in it. I want some coffee, like Daddy's." Katy laughed. Geraldine giggled. The two ate, content in the moment. "I'm glad you're here with me, hon, and I'm glad you're feeling better," she said. "I'm glad that was just a dream last night. And Lord, wherever Alan and the boys are right now, please keep them safe. I hope those boys are sitting down with their quilts over their heads." And on she talked to him. Time passed, and the noon meal was finished. Katy cleared the eating table. She moved about in her kitchen, singing her favorite chorus, emphasizing certain words. "Ask the Savior to help you, comfort, strengthen, and keep you. He is willing to aid you. He will carry you through. Just ask the Savior to help you, comfort, strengthen, and keep you. He is willing to aid you. He will carry you through." Suddenly, her thoughts returned to the snow again, and how fast it had been falling when she'd last looked. She said to herself, "Right this minute, before this snow gets any worse, I ought to wrap up this child and run down to that barn and put up those cows for Alan. He'll be back here before too long, and he'll be wanting to get that milking started." But at that moment Geraldine wailed, "Mommy, looky here. My dolly's head. Mommy, my dolly's head fell off." And the hours of that Saturday, December 21st, 1935, passed, and the dim light no longer filtered through that north window in Katie's kitchen, there on the Fox Dan Webb place. The end.